First, let's start with this case. The other day, my sister, 36F, was complaining to me that her family is chaos, and she doesn't understand why everyone can't get along and why they never have a truly good moment while everyone together. I listened to her for around 20 minutes, and she told me I was being quiet. My response was that she clearly needed to vent, and I didn't want to interject. That was mostly true, but I also think my sister is a little insane for thinking she'd get to have a nice, neat little family, given the craziness in her family. For context, my sister had her first child at 18, my nephew Shane, 18 meters. She dated Shane's dad for a while and found out when Shane was 1 that her boyfriend had another girl pregnant, and so they broke up. My sister and the other mother both got arrested for fighting, and she swore she would never let that woman or her child near Shane. She got married at 21 and had 2 more kids, Katie, 15 Fef, and Rye, 13 meters. She filed for divorce straight after Rye was born, and her ex-husband is nowhere in sight since. A year later, she met another man who had a baby with someone. My niece Lily, 12, is not my sister's bio child, but she raises her as her own, though unofficially since she's not adopted. Katie got married again, had Milo with that husband, and got pregnant with Sage, 7F, while married, but her ex-husband is not the father. Her youngest bio, so far, is Niall, 5Me, and his father is not in the picture either. My sister is married again. Her husband has 2 kids from his first marriage and 2 kids from his second marriage. He also has a child in his life who is not his biological kid. Doesn't get along with his biological kids. But he treats this child like his own. The household has many complicated relationships and divided loyalties. There are complications with some of the other parents involved and other children involved. It's too long and complicated to get involved in. But even among my sister's children, they are not all cohesive close siblings, and some resentments exist for one reason or another. Anyway, Lily was venting to me. She said nobody she knows has a family so incapable of getting together as hers. She asked me why I thought that was, and I said very blended families are more complex. She told me there are people with bigger blended families than hers. I told her bigger doesn't always mean having as many others involved as hers. Then she said again, they're all a family though, and they act like they don't want to be. And that's when I said probably because it's more of a circus than a family. My sister told me that was really unkind and untrue, that they are a family, even if others can't see it. She told me she expects an apology from me before we can speak again. Am I in the wrong? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Dear God, I had less trouble following genealogy of Elden Ring characters than your sister's lineage. I am giving you the you're not in the wrong verdict, because although your comment could be understood as rude, her life is obviously about perpetuating same mistakes and having same outcome at the cost of kids' happiness in the end. I know someone who did that to his kids, and their kids can't get along because they made a circus out of their lives. You're not in the wrong. She pressed you to explain yourself, and you told her what you were thinking. In these sorts of conversations, you can't expect people to choose their words carefully. They just say what comes to mind. If she didn't want to know, she shouldn't have asked. More step-parents should listen to their siblings and/or relatives watching from the sidelines. They always have good advice in these stories, but somehow the step-parent never listens and takes offense at any logical suggestions. You're not in the wrong. Next up, I, 27, am renting a house with my boyfriend, 26 Mers. I pay for 2/3 since my boyfriend is in school. We both work 2 jobs, but I still do the majority of the housework too. I have a lot on my plate. Boyfriend used to pay half and help with chores before he went to school. He went to school to earn a higher income, and we had to move to a more expensive, bigger place unexpectedly. We took in my boyfriend's brother-in-law 28 meters, in June after he moved out of their mom's house due to family problems. Brother-in-law is self-employed and doesn't earn much, so he pays $300 per month. My boyfriend and I agreed that we would give him a year, until April, to save up while paying $400 monthly, and we put brother-in-law on the lease, but he's only paying $300. Rent went up $200 when brother-in-law was put on the lease. Boyfriend was supposed to tell him that he's only welcome for a year and he needs to save up to move out, working another job if he has to. His family, his circus. It's his job. My boyfriend never had the conversation with brother-in-law. It's now January. Boyfriend and I are moving in with my parents to save for a house at the end of March. So brother-in-law needs to find a place to live by then. We told brother-in-law 2 weeks ago and it hasn't gone well. He's been giving me, specifically, the silent treatment. Now I look like the bad guy and am feeling disrespected in my home because my boyfriend never had the conversation with brother-in-law. It's causing issues between boyfriend and I. I feel disrespected by both of them. I'm paying and cleaning the most. I can't tell brother-in-law that it's not personal and that I feel like a failure because I can't afford to take care of 2 grown men anymore. And that boyfriend was in charge of telling him the plan before he even moved in. Because my boyfriend thinks I should just let it ride, instead of communicating with brother-in-law. I'm not sure that it would change anything, but I still think it's nonsense and the facts would be out there. Am I in the wrong for wanting boyfriend to advocate for me and take responsibility for this nonsense? Edit. Moving into my parents isn't just about us saving for a house. It's for Emmy to save for a house regardless of how our relationship goes, while saving money. We will both be able to pay half for the room, it's a smaller space to keep clean, we can stack savings accounts, and it will give us time to work on things like having hard conversations, which we will be having plenty of. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Your boyfriend wants you to deal with the fallout of his refusal to have an adult conversation with his brother. He wants you to deal with this garbage, like you deal with the bills and the house cleaning and probably everything else. You may want to decide if you want to tether yourself and your future to someone that disregards your feelings and your efforts to this degree. You're not in the wrong. Sounds like BF wanted to share his sugar mama housekeeper with his brother. Please don't buy a house with someone that isn't paying 50% of everything house-related. You shouldn't have to take care of a grown man. You're not in the wrong. Why do you feel like a failure for not being able to take care of 2 grown men? It's not something that you have a duty to do. The downside of being capable is that everyone will try to stick you with work that is their responsibility. I say this with all kindness. Move back to your parents' house without boyfriend or his brother. What people do in the present has at least some correlation to what they will do in the future. That boyfriend would bring his brother into the picture after only 4 months together, and expect that the brother would pay very little is troubling. The brother will try to hang on to that situation as long as he can. That boyfriend dragged out telling his brother for over 6 months is not an example of someone who is good at advocating for you. He failed miserably when it really counted. It doesn't matter who takes the responsibility for the brother leaving, though your boyfriend should. It matters that the brother leaves, and leaves quickly. If you are moving out at the end of the lease, the problem solves itself, because the brother can't afford the apartment on his own, nor can boyfriend and brother. But it's going to be really tense until then. The brother is paying only $100 effectively when you consider the $200 increase in rent when he was placed on the lease. He should be paying a third of whatever the rent is. There is no reason to delay the hard conversations. They need to start now. Next up, my mom 48F and I 16F have a strained relationship. She's a good mom, but she can be too strict and overbearing at times. My mom is also sort of a Karen. She's not so bad, but sometimes it's really hard to go out in public with her. Yesterday, we went to the mall to pick up some shoes that I had on hold, and when we got there, the cashier said that he didn't see any shoes registered to my card. We used my mother's card to pay. I don't want to say the name of the store, but basically to hold an item, you need to pay a fee. It's usually half the price of the shoe you're trying to hold, and you pay the other half later. So my mother had already paid the holding fee for the shoes, and we were just going to pay the rest and pick it up. But the cashier was telling us that no such transaction was made. We were confused because my mother's card was definitely charged, and we started to get into a bit of an argument with the cashier. My mom pulled out her bank statements as proof her card was charged and was demanding a refund if they weren't going to give us the shoes that we already paid half the price for. The cashier was saying that since nothing was on hold, then there was no money to refund. This pissed my mother off, and she started to get into a shouting match with the cashier. At this point, I was starting to get embarrassed as people were looking at us and other employees were coming out to see what was happening. The manager eventually came out, trying to calm my mother down. But when he told my mother the same thing the cashier was saying, she started to get irate. At this point, I decided to distance myself from the situation and look around the store. A couple minutes after this, security came in and dragged my screaming mother out. I pretended to look at some shoes for a couple minutes before leaving too. I ended up driving myself home. I have a license, and my dad had to go get my mom. When my mom got home, she was pissed at me, calling me a horrible daughter for leaving her behind and not having her back when I knew she was done wrong. I just wanted to distance myself from her embarrassing behavior. I really don't see what I did wrong here. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. If she wants to act a fool, that's on her. You don't have to be a part of it. You're not required to participate in her rude behaviors. If she had kept her cool, I'm sure the manager could have told her the next steps for getting a refund. But you can bet they'll remember her at that store now. You're not in the wrong. You're her child. It's not your responsibility to take care of her, and there's nothing you could have done anyway. She was acting badly and faced the consequences for it, and she's lashing out at you because she's upset. I'm sorry she's mad at you and that you had to deal with that, but you didn't do anything wrong. I don't really know what your mom expected you to be able to do. I don't think they would have released her to you as a minor. You joining in would have just gotten both of you in mall cop jail. And honestly, if she was yelling so badly that she got snapped up by a mall cop, then it must have been really bad, because I worked retail for 2 years and I've never seen someone get taken away. She's probably just incredibly embarrassed, as she should be, and taking it out on you since you're an easy target. You're not in the wrong. Next up, about 3 weeks ago, I 50 meters and my wife, 46F, put up a basketball hoop in my driveway for my 12F and 10F children to practice basketball. They play on basketball teams. I live in an HOA and checked the CC&Rs prior. Found nothing in there restricting this. Last week I got the following text. Jack, respectfully, may we get basketball quiet hours from 4 to 6 p.m. on weekends and 4:30 to 6:30 on weekdays? The constant bouncing of the ball is very disturbing of our senior rest time in the late afternoon. Thanks for considering. John, after again checking the county code and CC&Rs and consulting with my sister and friend, both attorneys, I wrote the following response a few days later. John, I've considered and discussed your request with my wife. While we want to be good neighbors and have met your prior requests, your current request for quiet hours during the late afternoon is unreasonably restrictive. In reading the County Noise Code Section Noise Ordinance and the CC&Rs, it appears that quiet hours as defined in the County Code are 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. MF and 10 p.m. 9 a.m. Sat Sun. The CC&Rs document is silent on additional quiet hours beyond County Code. You're asking for a restriction on their prime playtime between school and dinner for your senior rest time. I'm somewhat sympathetic to your dilemma since I work from home mostly. During business hours, I hear all manner of neighborhood noises. I have found a set of noise-canceling headphones very essential and effective. My children certainly don't play basketball daily, and while I have not measured the sound pressure level inside the house yet, I have a hard time with thinking it approaches anywhere near 55 dBA limit as defined in the County Noise Ordinance. Thank you for your understanding. Fairly quickly that night I received this response. Wow, Jack, your response is really over the top. We were simply asking for some neighborly consideration and certainly not expecting a legal brief in response. The noises you describe do happen, are sporadic and cease. The basketball is a constant bouncing on concrete under our bedroom and living areas, which is a completely different experience. Frankly, we were surprised the court was installed without the simple kindness of a conversation, as our lot lines are very minimal. The impact to our home enjoyment is substantial, and your suggestion that we live in headphones at the behest of your basketball whims is ludicrous. We are shocked at your unneighborly response, which is lacking in basic kindness. Consideration for the fact that we are over 70 and need some quiet periods to rest in our home is what we were seeking, as well as open rapport, so that we may continue to enjoy our neighborhood together. The past 12-plus years have been a very pleasant experience for us. We wrongly assumed that you simply didn't realize the impact on our living space from your sport court, and were opening a dialogue. Let's start judging. Please don't let your kids play in their own driveway after school ever. Nope. Your response was fine. You're not in the wrong. John lives in a neighborhood with other people. He can deal with daytime minimal noise. I think I would answer differently if it was a short-term request. Maybe if someone was seriously ill or something. But making up senior quiet hours as though that's a recognizable thing? No, he's way out of line. You're not in the wrong. 4:30, 6:30 is exactly when they should be playing after school. Really, when else would they get to play on a weekday between school and homework and chores and getting to bed at a decent house? Your neighbors are unreasonably grumpy. You're not in the wrong. Sounds like your neighbors are the classic elderly couple with control issues who feel everyone should bend to their whims because they're older. Good Lord. The message he sent made it sound like you live next door to a retirement home and were disturbing a whole community of dementia patients. They can get a big old lot in the middle of nowhere, or they can suck it up and deal with the reality of living with neighbors. Putting everyone on their nap schedule is not an option. You're not in the wrong. They should schedule their senior rest time while your kids are in school and guaranteed to not be playing AmITheA. It's totally outrageous to try and impose no basketball at all during pretty much the only possible time they could be playing it, especially with the current amount of daylight. My guess is that if you gave in to their demands come summer, the senior rest time hours would be significantly expanded to accommodate the terrible potential that they might play after 6:30.